Okay, here's what's up. If you haven't watched my last video about how you should vote on the legislature and how you could only vote on the legislature back in the day, then you should go watch this before you get into this video. Otherwise, you're going to be missing out on a whole lot of information that I'm not going to go back over again. So I'll link the video right up here. Anyways, thanks for coming back. We really appreciate it. So let's talk about why is the legislative branch of government the part of the government that you should actually vote on, and then allow them to do everything else. I'm going to tell you why. Because you shouldn't do that with the executive branch of government. Because that's one individual. One man, one woman, one individual with their own self-interest, their own family to take care of, their own people that they're thinking about. So how do you keep that guy in control? Well, you vote on all the people who are going to work with them. You see, that's the whole idea right there, is that you vote on the legislative branch, and then the legislative branch says, hey, Jim would make a really good governor. In fact, Jim is a pretty good politician, and he might make a good president. And maybe Jane can be the vice president or the Speaker of the House. You know, because that's what the vice president is. It's the Speaker of the House over the Senate. Because they're a president. All the executive branch of government does is they preside over the government that the legislature creates. That's the whole idea of it. They're like, oh yeah, that's why when the legislature passes a law, the executive gets to go, okay, yeah, I agree with this. Otherwise, the executive could be like, veto, I don't care about your law. And then the legislature has to come back with 2/3 of majority. They can still create it. They can go right around the executive branch, but they got to have 2/3 of a majority. Pretty ingenious way when you start to think about it, about how it was all set up. And when you quit voting on the executive parts of the government, like Josh Stein, Roy Cooper, Greg Newman, now you just got one branch of government to deal with. You go to the legislature and you go, hey, legislatures, I know that you guys wouldn't want Greg Newman out here breaking all these statutes y'all created for us, violating your constitution, your law that you enacted, supposedly to keep us safe and protected. Why don't you prove it? Why don't you prove it by going after a predator, going after an attorney general who's not doing his job, or going after a governor who won't lift a finger or do anything about the people working under him? Legislature, now it's your time to shine. And now you have a way of pointing the finger at one branch of government. Because in the end, it's your job. It's the legislature's job to create the form of government that we all live in. Imagine that. That's why back in the day, they didn't vote on president or vice president. They didn't vote on governor or lieutenant governor. And you want to know why the legislatures did? Because this way you didn't get any gridlock. You didn't get any gridlock. Think about it. The last 2 years of Obama, he couldn't do anything because the House and the Senate were controlled by Republicans. Last 2 years of Bush, he couldn't do anything because the House and the Senate were controlled by Democrats. See, when you allow the legislatures to pick whoever they wish to be in the executive branch and put them in the executive branch, then you can at least count on them to work with the executive. I mean, it is kind of their job, right? Right? Just to illustrate as a point at how little power governors actually have. Like everybody's like, oh, the governor made a lockdown order. right? Our governor's a tyrant. All these people talking about Trump. Trump's going to be a tyrant. He's just going to control everything. He's going to be like a dictator. Then COVID hits. People start getting coughs. Trump, why aren't you taking over our lives? Why aren't you telling us what to do and when to do it and how many masks we should have? It's hilarious. But governors who did enact executive orders, when they got challenged by the legislature, the Supreme Courts of those states, to the best of my knowledge, upheld the legislature every single time. But when the citizens sued because their constitutional rights were being violated, guess what? I don't think a Supreme Court anywhere in this country upheld that. You want to know why? Because it's not your constitutional rights. You didn't write them. It's the legislatures. The legislature wrote that constitution. The legislature came up with that government. That's why they have power and standing to take the governor to court over his actions. Get it? I mean, they tell you in everything that they do, in all of the news that they put out. They're telling everybody. It's just, see, us being hoodwinked didn't start with me and you. It started with our parents and their parents. Maybe even their grandparents. None of us have ever really known what it was like to live in a true, lawful, and free government. So how are any of us supposed to know what it's supposed to look like? What's it supposed to look like? And I don't even know if it's actually supposed to look this way. I'm just saying it makes a whole lot of sense to me. To me, with what I see going on around me. That's all I'm saying. That's all I can claim to say. That's all I can claim to say. So the legislatures, they have the final say when it comes to executive orders, huh? You know what else legislatures can do? They can impeach people. They can impeach them. Wow, what a concept. You know, they could impeach Greg Newman for violating their constitution and the statutes that they put in place supposedly to keep the people of North Carolina safe. They could impeach him. Here's the only problem with that, is that he's an elected official. So they're going to be like, well, if you don't like the job he's doing, just vote him out of office, even though a district attorney really shouldn't be a job in the government. Like, they shouldn't have an attorney that we elect whose sole job is to come and harass us. like that's all they do, is prosecute criminal activity. And most of what they prosecute these days aren't even crimes. And then when they do actually try and prosecute a crime like child rape, they let the guy walk. They let him walk. And this is why it's a job that shouldn't exist, is because VO's father should have prosecuted it. He would have never let James Sapp walk. Word on my life, he would have never let James Sapp walk. That's why a district attorney shouldn't exist, but they created it. You know, the legislature, they created this position, which is how you know it's an administrative position. It's because the legislature created it and the governor signed off on it. And the legislature, well, they created it. They have the power to destroy it. And every single state constitution talks about impeachment. The federal constitution talks about impeachment. But nobody's going to bring an impeachment action against a district attorney because there's only a handful of legislatures who are going to get a phone call with somebody complaining about it. That's the problem. Now, see, if nobody could vote on that guy, everybody in North Carolina would be like, we're living under a tyrannical government. We got to get this guy out of office. Everybody would be calling their legislature. But because we can vote on him, it doesn't matter that there's no one else on the ballot. It doesn't matter that there's no competition. Just because you can vote on him, it's like, well, I guess he did something to get the job. I mean, you know, his name was on the ballot or something. I don't know. I don't know. And since the legislature, their whole job is creating the government, don't you think they would know who would fill those positions better than we would? I mean, since it was their entire job to kind of think this thing up and formulate it, write it down into a bill, have lawyers look over it, put it in front of the governor and say, hey, you mind signing this? Don't you think they would know how it would run or function better than we would? I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about how the government worked today. Pfft. Just me. Because if people could get this focus back, if we could get it back to just one branch of government, and we could get it onto the legislature, if we could just focus on the legislature. See, there's a whole lot of legislatures out there. And if we're focused on all of them, we can maybe get rid of some of the bad apples. But what we can't do, what we can't afford to do, is keep letting them do what they're doing and then blame everything on the executive branch. Oh, I'm sorry that rapist got to walk. You know, that's under the executive branch. It wasn't under our jurisdiction. Because we gave that power away to the governor. Oh, I'm sorry that we let Alex Acosta walk when he was working in concert with the defense attorneys the whole time to rob the victims of their day in court. Violated multiple statutes that the legislature put together to protect you. But that's the executive branch. That's what they got to do. That's why the DOJ cleared them. Is that the government you wish to live under? Is that the government you wish to be a part of? Because in the last video, I was talking about for people to vote, they had to pay taxes. They had to pay those taxes willingly. They had to want to participate in their government. And now, there's no choice. They force you to participate. And I thought they outlawed slavery. Man, whatever. Whatever. Anyways, I am just conspiracy, and I just wish to conspire with other good people of this planet to leave a better world for future generations than the world we all grew up in. Peace.